Ahoy, number 10. Contemplating no. You inform me that as you respond to circumstances in your daily involvement with differentiated objects, you're never not in the Buddha Dharma. You also say that amidst your daily activities and conduct, you use the saying, "A dog has no Buddha nature," to clear away emotional defilements. If you make efforts like this, I'm afraid you'll never attain enlightened entry. Please examine what's under your feet. Where do differentiated objects come from? How can you smash emotional defilements in the midst of your activities with the saying, a dog has no Buddha nature? Who is it who can know he's clearing away emotional defilements? Didn't Buddha say, sentient beings are inverted. They lose themselves and pursue things. Basically, things have no inherent nature. Those who lose themselves pursue them on their own. Originally, objects are undifferentiated. Those who lose themselves do their own differentiating. You say you have daily contact with differentiated objects, but you're also within the Buddha Dharma. If you're in the Buddha Dharma, it's not an object of differentiation. If you are among differentiated objects, then it is not the Buddha Dharma. Pick one up, let one go. What end will there be? At the Nirvana assembly, the day and night before the Buddha passed on, when he expounded the Nirvana scripture, the broad-browed butcher put down his slaughtering knife and immediately attained Buddhahood where he stood. How could you have so much sadness and sorrow? In your daily activities, as you respond to circumstances, as soon as you become aware of being involved with differentiated objects, just go to the differentiating to raise the saying, a dog has no Buddha nature. And don't think of it as a clearing away. Don't think of it as an emotional defilement. Don't think of it as a differentiation. And don't think of it as the Buddha Dharma. Simply contemplate the saying, a dog has no Buddha nature. Just bring up the word, no. And don't set your mind on it and await enlightenment. If you do, objects and the Buddha Dharma are differentiated. Emotional defilements and the saying, a dog has no Buddha nature, are differentiated. Interrupted and uninterrupted are differentiated. And encountering the confusion of emotional defilements, so body and mind are unsettled, and being able to know so many differentiations is also differentiated. If you want to remove this disease, just contemplate the word no. Just look at the broad-browed butcher putting down his knife and saying, I am one of the 10,000 Buddhas. True or false? If you assess it as true or false, again, you plunge into objects of differentiation. It is not as good as cutting it in two with a single stroke. Don't think of before and after. If you think of before and after, this is more differentiating. Husan Shah said this matter cannot be limited. The road of thought is cut off. It does not depend on an array of adornments. From the beginning, it's been real and pure. Moving, acting, talking, laughing, clearly understanding, wherever you are. There's nothing more lacking. People these days do not understand the truth in this, and vainly involve themselves with sensory phenomenon, getting defiled all over and tied down everywhere. Even if they understand, some subjects are present in complex confusion. Name and forms are not genuine, so they try to freeze their minds and gather in their attention, taking things and returning them to emptiness, shutting their eyes, hiding their eyes, as if a thought starts up, they immediately demolish it. As soon as the slightest conception arises, they immediately press it down. Those with a view like this are outsiders who have fallen into empty annihilation, dead men whose spirits have not departed, dark and silent, without awareness or knowledge. They're covering their ears to steal a bell, vainly deluding themselves. Now I understand that one. You said in your letter, all you said in your letter was the disease of Hassan Shah's condemned the perverted Chan of quiescent illumination, a pit to bury people in. You must realize this. When you bring up a saying, don't use so many maneuvers at all. Just don't let there be any interruption whether you're walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. Don't discriminate joy and anger, sorrow and bliss. Just keep on bringing up the saying, raising it and raising it, looking and looking. When you feel there's no road for reason and no flavor, and in your mind you're oppressed and troubled, this is the place for each person to abandon his body and life. Remember, don't shrink back in your mind when you see a realm like this. Such a realm is precisely the scene for becoming a Buddha and being an ancestral teacher. Yet, the false teachers of silent illumination just consider wordlessness as the ultimate principle, calling it the matter of the other side of the primordial Buddha, or of the before the empty eon. They do not believe there is a gate of enlightenment, and consider enlightenment as a lie, as something secondary, as an expedient word, or an expression to draw people in. This crowd deceive others and deceive themselves, lead others into error, and go wrong themselves. You should also realize this. In the conduct of your daily activities, as you are involved with differentiated objects, when you become aware of saving power, this is where you gain power. Gaining power is the ultimate in saving power. If you use the slightest power to uphold it, this is definitely a false method. That's not Buddhism. Just take the mind, so long-lasting, and bring it together with the saying, a dog has no Buddha nature. Keep them together till the mind has no place to go. Suddenly, it is like awakening from a dream, like a lotus flower opening, like parting the clouds and seeing the moon. When you reach such a moment, naturally you attain unity. Through the upsets and errors of your daily activities, just contemplate the word no. Don't be concerned with awakening or not awakening, getting through or not getting through. All the Buddhas of the three worlds were just unconcerned people. People for whom there is nothing. All the generations of ancestral teachers, too, were just people without concerns. An ancient worthy said, just comprehend nothingness in the midst of things, unconcern amidst concerns. When seeing forms and hearing sounds, don't act blind and deaf. Another ancient worthy said, fools remove objects, but don't obliterate mind. The wise wipe out mind without removing objects. Since in all places there's no mind, all kinds of objects of differentiation are non-existent of themselves. Gentlemen of affair these days, though, aren't quick to want to understand Chan. They think a lot about the scriptural teachings and the sayings of the ancestral teachers, wanting to be able to explain clearly. They are far from knowing that this clarity is nonetheless an unclear matter. If you can penetrate the word no, you won't have to ask anyone else about clear and unclear. I teach gentlemen of affairs to let go and make themselves dull. This is the same principle. It's not as bad as to get first prize in looking dull either. And it's not bad to get first prize in looking dull either. I'm just afraid you'll hand in an empty paper. What a laugh. Abandon them at once. It is a great error to know you are deluded and to not awaken. To cling to delusion and wait for awakening is also a big mistake. Why? Well, you're deluded because you don't awaken. To hold to delusion and wait for enlightenment is to be even more unaware, even more deluded. If you want to smash these two heavy barriers, please abandon them at once. If you can't abandon them, how can there ever be a stop to delusion after delusion, awakening after awakening? Don't keep knowledge. When you study this path, before you've gained an entry, it seems endlessly difficult. When you hear the comments of the teachers of the school, it seems even harder to understand. This is because of the mind that grasps for realization and seeks rest is not removed. You are obstructed by this. As soon as this mind stops, you finally realize the path is neither difficult nor easy, and also that it cannot be passed on by teachers. If you want to use mind to wait for enlightenment and rest, then even if you study from where you stand now until Maitreya is born, you will still won't understand and won't be able to attain enlightenment or rest. You'll be increasing your delusion and unhappiness. Master Payan Tien said, "Spiritual light undimmed, the excellent advice of the ages. To enter this gate, don't keep knowledge." Another ancient worthy said, "This matter cannot be sought with mind, it cannot be attained without mind. It cannot be told in words, and it can't be conveyed with silence." This is the first-class trailing mud and dripping water, extremely compassionate talk. Often people studying the path just read past, excuse me. Often people studying the path just read past these pointers like this without examining them carefully to see what the principle is. If you're a man with bones and sinews, as soon as you hear this mentioned, you immediately take the Diamond King's jewel sword and with one blow cut off these 4 roads of complications. Thus, the road of birth and death are cut off. The road of ordinary and holy is cut off. The road of calculation and thought is cut off. And the road of gain and loss, of right and wrong, is cut off too. Right where the person stands, he is purified and clean, naked and free, and ungraspable. Won't he be happy and content? Haven't you read what Master Kuan Si's first encounter with Lin Chi in the old days? When Lin Chi saw him coming, he got down off his meditation bench and abruptly held him tightly to his breast. Kuan Si immediately said, I get it. Lin Chi knew he had already penetrated, so he immediately pushed him away and had no more words to discuss with him. At such a time, how could Kuan Si think or calculate or reply? Fortunately, since these ancient times, there have been models like this, but people in these days, because of their crude minds, don't make it their business. If from the first Kuan Si had had the least intention of waiting for enlightenment, realization, or rest, don't tell me he would have been immediately enlightened when he was held fast. No, he would have been dragged around the world with his hands and feet bound, unable to enter enlightenment or rest. Knowledge as a barrier and as a companion. You tell me that you've had faith in the path since your early years, but in later years you've been obstructed by your knowledge and understanding and have never had an enlightened entry. You want to know an expedient method for fully comprehending the path day and night. Since we are perfectly conscientious, I wouldn't presume to judge the case from the outside, but a few creeping vines may be permitted. This very one seeking enlightenment and entry has been the knowledge and understanding that obstructs the path. What other knowledge is there to obstruct you? Ultimately, what is being called knowledge? Where does knowledge come from? And who is being obstructed? In this one statement of yours, there are 3 mistakes. Saying you are obstructed by knowledge is one. Saying you are not enlightened and willing to be deluded is another. And going on within delusion to use this mind to wait for enlightenment is another. These three mistakes are the root of birth and death. You must stop producing them for a moment, so that the mind of these errors is cut off. Only then do you realize there is no delusion to be smashed, no enlightenment to be expected, and no knowledge that can cause obstruction. You'll be like a man drinking water, who knows for himself whether it is cold or warm. After a long time, naturally, you won't entertain this view. Just go to the mind that can know knowledge to see if it, too, can cause obstruction, to see if in the mind that can know knowledge there are so many kinds or not. Since ancient times, people with great wisdom have all taken knowledge as their companion, considered knowledge an expedient means, practiced the compassion of equanimity in knowledge, and done all the business of Buddhas in knowledge. Like dragons reaching the water, like tigers taking to the mountains, they never considered this knowledge an affliction, because they thoroughly understood the origin of knowledge. Once you recognize the origin of knowledge, then this very knowledge is a field of liberation, a place to get out of birth and death. Since it's the site of liberation, the place to escape birth and death, the knower is quiescent and extinct in his own essential being. Since the knower is quiescent and extinct, the one who can know knowledge cannot but be quiescent and extinct. Enlightenment, nirvana, true thusness, and Buddha nature cannot but be quiescent and extinct. What else is there to cause obstruction? Where else will you seek enlightenment and entry? One path, pure and even. You, Mao Tao, great master of the light of concentration, asked me, please point out the concise essentials of this mind and this inherent nature of delusion and enlightenment, of turning toward and turning away. I was silent and didn't answer. When you asked again, I laughed and said, as for the concise essentials, they cannot be pointed out to people. If it could be pointed out, it wouldn't be the essentials. You said, how can you have no expedient means to enable me to go toward the path? Now I said, as for expedience, well then, with mind, there is no delusion or enlightenment. With inherent nature, there is no turning towards or turning away. But people set up views of delusion and enlightenment and hold to interpretations of turning toward and turning away, wanting to understand this mind and see this inherent nature. Thus, this mind and its nature immediately flow into wrong paths, following the person's inversions, errors, and confusion. Hence, enlightenment is not distinguished from delusion, nor the wrong separated from the correct, because they do not fully understand the dreamlike illusion of this mind, this nature. They falsely establish pairs of terms. They consider turning toward and turning away, delusion and enlightenment as real, and accept this mind and this nature as true. They are far from realizing that whether true or not true, false or not false, worldly or world transcending, these are merely provisional statements. Thus, Vimalakirti said, the Dharma cannot be seen, heard, perceived, or known. If you employ seeing, hearing, perceiving, and knowing, then this is seeing, hearing, perceiving, and knowing. It's not seeking the Dharma. Another ancient worthy said, if you grasp your own self and your own mind as the ultimate, there must be other things and other people to be the opposite. Again, Buddha told the kindly one, foremost among his chief disciples in expounding the Dharma, you use the characteristics of form to you use the characteristics of form and void to overturn and eliminate each other in the repository of thusness, which, accordingly, becomes form or void and extends throughout the cosmos. I use subtle illumination, undestroyed and unborn, to merge with the repository of thusness, so the repository of thusness is nothing but the light of subtle awakening shining throughout the cosmos. So, Buddha was provisionally indicating that using form and void to overturn and eliminate each other is wrong, and considering subtle illumination undestroyed and unborn is right. These are medicinal words to cure the two diseases of delusion, delusion and enlightenment. Not a set definition by the Buddha. Words to smash the clinging to delusion and enlightenment, mind and nature, turning toward and turning away as real things. Haven't you read, the Bodhisattva of the Diamond Treasury said, all the three worlds are only verbal statements. All the various phenomena have no basis in verbal statements, and all verbal statements have no basis within all various phenomena. If views of delusion and enlightenment perish, and interpretations of turning toward and turning away are cut off, then the mind is lucid and clear as the bright sun, and its nature is vast and open as empty space. Right where the person stands, he emits light and moves the earth, shining through the 10 directions. Those who see this light all realize acceptance of things as unborn. When you arrive at such a time, naturally you're in tacit accord with this mind and its nature. Only then do you know that in the past there was basically no delusion, and now there is basically no enlightenment. That enlightenment is delusion, and delusion is enlightenment. That turning toward and turning away are identical, and that inherent nature is identical to mind, and mind is identical to inherent nature. That Buddhas are delusive demons, and delusive demons are Buddhas. That the one path is pure and clean, or even. That there is no equal or not equal. All this will be in the constant lot of one's own mind, not dependent on the skills of another. Even so, it's from lack of any other choice again that I say this. Don't immediately consider this as really true. If you consider it as really true, then you are ignorant of expedient means, accepting dead words as fixed, multiplying empty falsehoods, producing even more confusion. There will be no end to it. When you get there, where there's no way to use your mind, it's not as good as knowing of such things. It's not as good as knowing of such things, but putting them to one side and turning to the great Master Ma's mind itself is Buddha, and not mind, not Buddha. And it is not mind, it's not the Buddha, it's not things. Or Zhao Zhou's answer to what is the meaning of the coming from the west? The cypress tree in the garden. Or Yun Min's answer to when not giving rise to a single thought, is there fault or not? Mount Sumeru. Or Tai Yu's sawing apart the scale beam. Or Yuan Yang's answer to what is Buddha, a lump of earth. Or Hu Ye of Fin Yang's frequent reply to questioners, don't think falsely. Or Chu Tsi's lifelong teaching by simply raising his finger, Gucci. Ultimately, what principle is it? This, then, is my expedient means. Think it over, my Otao. Pause. Be right back later.